I'm reading Kenneth Rexroth. He gets kind of grandfathered in with the Beats, although he was really exactly one generation older than they were. Rexroth went to San Francisco in the late 20s rather than the late 50s like the Beats did. And he was in Chicago just before he went to California. And this is a portrait of the speakeasies in Prohibition Chicago in the 20s from his autobiography, which is called An Autobiographical Novel. It was early Prohibition. Bars in Chicago were grim, and the liquor was bad. Furthermore, women wished to take part in public intellectual conviviality, as they had not much in the days of Rector's or the Herkimer Wine Company bar. There arose in Chicago and New York, and then in all the principal cities of the country, that now utterly vanished and never successfully revived institution, the Bohemian Tea House. I don't remember the first one in Chicago, but the first one to attract much attention was the Wind Blew Inn, run by a young girl circus performer. It started about the time I went to high school and provided me with a place to meet people, to sit and listen and try to look sophisticated. All my young days, I was a marvelous listener, something I find it almost impossible to believe of myself today. There had already been in existence for a number of years a most important part of the mythology of the Chicago of the 20s, the Dill Pickle Club. Originally, this had been a bona fide club of radical bohemians founded by Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, the people around the Charles Kerr Socialist Publishing Company, the Chicago leaders of the IWW, and a few artists and writers. In the course of time, it became a private enterprise in the hands of Elizabeth Gurley Flynn's ex-husband, Jack Jones. These were remarkable hands in themselves because they lacked several fingers. Like the McNamara brothers, Jack had been a sabotage expert employed by various unions. He was an anarchist and did not belong to any union himself, even the IWW, but whenever things got hot and the boys wanted to make some trouble for the bosses, they used to send for Jack. He was an expert at dosing gasoline with sugar, putting sulfuric acid in the lubricating oil and emery powder in the bearings, crossing wires and turning off and on the wrong valves. In a strike in the northern Michigan mines, he'd blown off 2 or 3 fingers on each hand, souping nitroglycerin out of blasting powder in a frying pan on the kitchen stove. He was the author of a pamphlet on sabotage, often attributed to Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, whose untimely publication helped break one of the great Eastern strikes. To accompany his claw-like hands, he had pale blue crossed eyes, like quarreling oysters, in a huge bushy-haired head, very long arms, a very long waist, short bow legs, and turned-out toes, so he looked rather like a duck, happy and angry at the same time. He would have made a wonderful beatnik because his conversation consisted entirely of nonsensical interjections and obscenity. Talking with the grocery man or the letter carrier, Jack sounded like Tristan Tzara and Gregory Corso both talking at once. In the Pickle, he had a coffee bar, a little theater, a lecture and dance hall. In addition, he was mad about machinery and was always manufacturing inventions, one of which was a toy duck, which looked exactly like him and waddled with precisely his gait. He planned to make several millions with this duck and put the revolution on Easy Street, but it never sold. And for years, he collected lathes, milling machines, drill presses like a pack rat, or I suppose, considering their size, like a pack dinosaur. His machine shop, which slowly encroached on the other departments, could have turned out respectable small tanks or cannons, and the dill pickle duck was just a little bitty thing, just about 8 inches long. On Sunday nights, Jack ran a lecture followed by an open forum. He had only one principle of publicity. He would bill a lecture on relativity theory, and he had amazing talent for getting really important scholars to talk for him under a lewd title such as, "Should the Brownian movement best be approached from the rear?" Saturdays, the chairs were cleared away, and the Chicago jazzmen of the early 20s played for a dance which lasted all night. Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, the little theater put on Strindberg, Ibsen, Shaw, Lord Dunsany, Synge, and the early plays of Eugene O'Neill. Jack was a fair actor and fitted the early seagoing plays of O'Neill as though they had been written for him. The rest of the company had trouble learning their lines and finding their way on and off the stage. On the walls, there was always an art exhibit of the leaders of early Chicago modernism. As the years went on, Jack got old and pretty crazy. The dill pickle grew more and more vulgar, was finally taken over by the organization, and turned into a rough and fraudulent operation. Jones had lost his last wife out of a small boat in a terrific storm one night on Lake Michigan, and on the anniversary of her death, he always went quite mad. Finally, on the night of the 20th anniversary of her death, he killed himself. The pickle had long since become a dangerous tourist trap. The dill pickle occupied a row of remodeled houses in Tooker Alley. Out the alley and around the corner was Bughouse Square, where every variety of radical sect, lunatic religion, and crackpot health panacea was preached from a row of soapboxes every night in the week when it wasn't storming. The soapboxers, or at least the political radicals among them, hung out in the dill pickle and constituted the inner core of club membership. Then there was a group of girls, who were almost all prostitutes, who had drifted in off North Clark Street, lonely for coffee and company, as whores always are. In the course of time, they became the mistresses of various newspapermen, wobblies, anarchists, and socialist leaders who hung around the place. One was the girl of Lionel Moise, pronounced Moise, the man who is supposed to have taught Ernest Hemingway how to write. At least she was one of what whores call his wives-in-law, and shared him with a newspaper woman, a sculptress, and the daughter of a millionaire judge. Saturday nights, when the girls got drunk on Bugs Moran's gin, the bottles over the beautiful, beloved body of Lionel Moise were epical, the battles, deserving, as they say, the pen of a Creasy. None of these people was a fool or a hoodlum. All of the girls were beautiful. Even the one who went by the name of Sloppy Liz was fairly good-looking. And they all made devoted mistresses, wives, and nurses for husbands who were always being put in jail or beaten up for alcoholism or for revolution or both.